Hello, everyone. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling from. It is 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and I am here to kick off our first ever Skillsoft Leadercamp. I'm Elisa Vincent, Vice President of Talent Enablement at Skillsoft, and I am delighted to have you all join me today. On behalf of the entire Skillsoft organization, I'm thrilled to be spending time with all of you. We know that right now, time is at a premium for so many of us. Our goal in putting together this leader camp was to reach out and offer you support, offer our support to you, a leader in the midst of change, a leader who's building a new normal, a leader who may have had to take on new and additional responsibilities, who's balancing your needs with those of the people and the organizations that you lead. Throughout these next 3 days, we are going to go on a journey together. And this leader camp will offer you a space to learn, connect, reflect, and design your future. I've heard this pandemic called the great equalizer. It is and it isn't. We've all had different experiences. This leader camp, before we get started, I want to make sure to emphasize this point for all of you, is not an evaluative experience, but rather a developmental experience, a collaborative experience, where we can share our thoughts and our challenges with each other and start to design what tomorrow will look like together. There is no right or wrong. We are learning as we go, and determining how best to leverage leadership qualities and approaches for our needs at this time is so important. And now, with everything that we have been through, is the time for you as a leader to invest in your well-being, to invest in your leadership. We want this session to be interactive between me as the facilitator and all of you with each other. I am joined here today by two of my colleagues, Barb Waters and Shannon Lutge. You cannot see them, but they are here, and they will provide support with our interactivity features, and they will be by my side and by our side facilitating this session over the next few days. So let's get started with an overview, since this is our first day, of what the next 3 days together will look like, and then we will jump right into our session for today. These next 3 days have been built as a journey, and our objectives are as follows. To start the journey looking at ourselves as leaders leading into an unknown space, leading into what we've started to call this new normal. How can we build resilience and agility and set appropriate urgency and be able to pivot and persevere effectively? How can we make sure that when we're doing this with all of these additional worries and concerns that we have on our plates, that we're deploying effective tools to engage and inspire our teams during times of uncertainty and change? And then lastly, we are together going to set our leadership vision and strategy for forward momentum in this complex and rapidly evolving environment. We believe that in response to this global moment that we're all experiencing, there are 3 pillars to your leadership that you need to care for and build in equal parts. And this leader camp has been built around these 3 pillars. So the first pillar is you, yourself. How are you as a leader responding? How are you taking care of yourself? The second pillar, which we'll talk about on day 2, is your impact. How are you impacting the people that you lead, your team? And how can we make sure that we do that in these complex and uncertain times? And on the 3rd day, we're going to talk about your reach, seizing the opportunity that this global pandemic has given us as leaders to reach into our organizational ecosystems and have an impact. Each day, we will cover one of these pillars. Now, there's hundreds of us in the room together today, and that's amazing. I'm so delighted to have all of you here with me. And I can think of no better way than to gather resilience and energy to lead in the unknown in crisis than to leverage the power of our collective genius and our collective experience together. Your engagement with all of us today will allow you to reflect on your needs, to gather some recommendations from others, to engage with others, and to build your network. And you can do this by utilizing the various functionality that we have in our classroom today. At the beginning of each of our sessions, I'll go through each of these. So we're going to be doing a lot of polling. The polling is anonymous. The reason for the poll questions are to allow you an opportunity to reflect on how you're doing, what your challenges are, what your strengths are, and an action plan moving forward. We're also going to be using the chat functionality, which I see that a lot of you are using already. In the chat pod, if you would like to be anonymous, you have the opportunity to do so by hovering over your name, clicking more, and then rename. And when you are chatting, please, we're going to be learning as much from each other today as you're going to be learning from me. Please, when you're chatting, make sure that you are chatting to everyone by clicking the drop-down menu and selecting everyone and not just to us panelists. Now, if you do have a question and you don't want everyone to see it and you want to just raise it to the panelists, please use the Q&A functionality. If you click on Q&A at the bottom of your screen, any question that you submit will be sent to me, Barb, or Shannon, and we will be able to respond to it. If we cannot respond to it in the moment, we will make sure to address it in tomorrow's session. If you have any technical concerns or any technical issues, please do let us know in the Q&A pod. Lastly, for those of you that are not Percipio customers already, you will have already received a link to register for a 60-day free trial of Percipio. All of the content that I will be referencing here, the books, the thought leadership, is available to you in a channel in Percipio called Leading in the New Normal. You'll be able to reference those books there, reference the thought leadership there. For those of you that are clients of Percipio, the channel has been created and it is available to you in Percipio already. Here's what we know. Leadership is equal parts head and heart. And in a time when we feel responsible for creating stability among our teams, for others, in our workplace, we need to first create that stability in ourselves and in our leadership, our self-leadership. So we are going to be starting each day with a moment of mindfulness, checking our own pulses, sharpening our focus, and then we're going to end each day with building our action plan. So in the hour and a half that we have together, which is a short time, we are going to be practicing our ability to be both centered and our ability to also drive and create momentum. Let's face it, we are all at some level feeling the stress and destabilization of this pandemic on our beings, on our teams, on our organizations. The leadership burden right now is a heavy one, where we have to jump from being tactical to being strategic, from being tired to being inspirational. Many of us are carrying a great deal of mental and emotional weight on our shoulders. And for those of us, and there are some of us, who have been navigating change a bit faster and who are seeing this moment as a moment of transformation. For those of us, though, who feel like we're just picking up the pieces and putting out fires. For those of us who are busier than we've ever been before, if we do not take the moment now to put our own oxygen mask on first, to empower ourselves, we will be less capable of bouncing back, less capable of leading others, and more capable of experiencing burnout. It's not news to anyone when I say that leadership in the new normal needs to be compassionate. And it's really difficult to be compassionate with others when we are not first compassionate with ourselves. So let's take a moment now to start off on the right foot. In reducing, if eliminating feels like too lofty of a goal right now, whatever clutter and worry and noise that you have surrounding you, so that you can focus and be fully present on the rest of the session today. So let's just start with the moment of mindfulness that is good practice for all of us as leaders to start doing if we haven't already, and to continue doing and never to stop. So if you could just follow my lead for one moment, and if you're standing, put your feet firmly in the ground, spread your legs apart a little bit, lower your shoulders, stand up straight, and close your eyes. If you're sitting, bring your shoulders down, lift your neck up, and close your eyes. And for a moment now, just be fully present and take one deep breath in. Hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale it. And with that exhale, let out all the noise and the worry and the distractions. And pause for just a moment. To quote Bob Dylan, the times, they are a-changing. And we've seen this before. Our world has seen rapid change and destabilization in times of war, in global recessions and depressions, in times of a global health crisis, natural disasters, you name it. There have been many more instances throughout our history. And after each one, we have come out on the other side, transformed through our survival of it. The question we need to be asking ourselves is, what lessons are we learning in these moments about ourselves, about our leadership, about others, that will help us get through to the other side and sustain us on the other side? A reality is that we're living in Vuca times. Vuca is a term used by many in the leadership development space, which means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We're feeling all of these things. Vuca has taken on new meaning for many of us. The Vuca acronym was first used in the late 1980s by Warren Bennis, who is one of the great leadership theorists, and it was introduced by the US Army War College to describe a post-Cold War world, one of chaos, conflict, and disorganization. Many of us are feeling this way now. So before we can think about how we can move forward and build our resilience and build our bounce, our grit, whatever we want to call it, I want to pause for a moment and allow you an opportunity to reflect on what you're experiencing right now in this Vuca world that we're in. So, Shannon, if you could bring up poll number 1 for us. What has been your biggest leadership challenge? What have been your biggest leadership challenges since the onset of this pandemic? Select all that apply. Has it been managing stress and anxiety? Has it been navigating the unknown? Has it been ensuring health and safety, maintaining business and cultural continuity, retaining engagement and motivation, building your plan forward, or other? Remember, this polling is anonymous and allows you an opportunity to reflect. And I'm not surprised to see here that we don't have one big winner. All of these things in various levels are challenging all of us. We have navigating the unknown is extremely difficult, right? And re-engaging and retaining engagement and motivation seem to be neck and neck. But all of them are important and challenging us at this time. So Shannon, if you could share the results. We can see that retaining and engaging motivation is a big one for us, but so aren't all of the others. So Vuca has taken on new meaning, but let's shift our mindsets for a moment and think it might not all be bad, because in volatility, there is opportunity to test our strengths and flexibility, our capacity as leaders and as people to ebb and flow. In uncertainty, there's opportunity to design a new future and create structure. In complexity, there's an opportunity to solve problems and simplify our lives. And in ambiguity, there's an opportunity to answer crucial questions that we may have ignored before, we may have not had the time to consider before, and problem solve in new ways. So looking for opportunity in Vuca, for us as leaders, for ourselves, has been a big mindset shift for many of us. For some of us, that may feel unrealistic right now, and that's okay. I'm not suggesting that we need to do this in big and grandiose ways. Sometimes it is the smallest adjustments in our behaviors that can have the largest impact. And oftentimes it is in these moments, in moments like these, that we test ourselves and see what we're truly capable of. This much we know is true. Our current environment has tested us in ways that we've never been tested before, but some fundamentally basic facets of leadership still ring true. As I said before, leadership speaks to the heart and to the head of others through your head and your heart. It is a feeling and a process. It is empathy and it is drive. And to be effective leaders now, and in order to lead whatever lies ahead, your leadership must be equal parts, centeredness and movement. There's a metaphor that really resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with you as well, and that's one of sailing. I don't know how many of you are sailors in the room today. Let us know in the chat pod if you are, or maybe surfers, or people who are used to navigating the unknown in this way. I believe that in order for us to be leaders in this new normal, we need to lead ourselves first, and we need to be able to respond to this wave that we are on. And we do that in 5 ways. 5 steps for all leaders, regardless of your role in an organization, to help us respond to the wave, build our bounce and resilience, help us eliminate noise and reduce stress, and help us focus on the right priorities at the right time. Establish your leadership purpose. Envision your anchor, that which keeps you grounded. Use your compass, and then navigate the storm, making sure you're using the right tools and focusing on the right priorities. And along the way, and when you reach your destination, celebrate your victories, your arrival, and what you've learned along the way. Your responsiveness to what lies ahead as a leader is both an art and a science. And if we look at ourselves as artists and scientists, there's so much more that goes into that. One, of setting a realistic path, then charting your map, and then knowing when to hunker down and anchor firmly when you need to. So let's start with leadership purpose. A leader with a strong purpose aligns their personal values with their definition of success and achieves a sense of meaning and well-being in attaining their goals. As leaders, we need to ask ourselves a question on a regular basis. Write our answers down, revisit them, go back to them, refine them. This is an iterative process. We don't just have one purpose at one time. Things shift. Our values, though, are grounded in the same place, and we need to dial into those. So we need to ask ourselves on a regular basis, when there's so much going around and there's so much I don't know, what do I know? Why do I do what I do? What brings me joy and gives me satisfaction? What do I see as the purpose of my work? And is my work tied to something that has meaning? Ask yourself these questions. Now, don't get me wrong. Lately, I've been sharing in the sentiment of purpose. What purpose? I feel like I'm just juggling things from day to day, just chugging along, trying to pay the bills as best as I can and putting out one fire after another. That's okay. Especially now, many of us do feel that way. And therefore, as a result, especially in times of crisis and change. We need to be intentional about how often we reassess our purpose. Your purpose, that which gives your leadership meaning, is what you go back to when things feel chaotic. It is where you can find guidance for your priorities, your drive. It is what grounds you and helps you eliminate the noise. In this experience of writing it down and affirming it to yourself on a regular basis can inspire you and bring clarity. It triggers your brain to pause and focus. Many experts say this. So at Skillsoft 2 weeks ago, we had a full day digital learning experience called Perspectives. And Sean Aker, the author of The Happiness Advantage and Big Potential, joined us live. And he said something that really struck me, and that's why I'm sharing it with you here today. He said, energy comes from meaning. When I heard him say this, I thought, well, this is so true. As leaders, we need to find and have meaning in our work. And in times of crisis, where it might be harder for us to find the time to find that, we need to make sure that we do and that we ground ourselves there, even if it's just 2 minutes a day. We all don't have to look very far to see and look at the people around us in our communities that everyone's looking for meaning. We're all looking to make sense of things and feel like we have a purpose. Especially now, those of us grappling with the consequences of recession or a health scare or job loss, we're looking for the why. And as leaders, we can't provide this to others without being able to define it for ourselves. Simon Sinek, the author of Start With Why, calls this our why. He says that there are only 2 ways to influence human behavior. We can either manipulate it or we can inspire it. And right now, we need to make sure that we're inspiring it. That's what the new normal, that's what the road ahead is going to require of us. So if we follow Simon's logic here, finding our purpose is aligning our values with our actions, but also making sure that we find the inspiration to fuel us. It's also about defining what's important to you right now, at this moment. What is most important to you? Is it maintaining your livelihood? Is it safeguarding your business? Is it the health and safety of the people that work for you? Is it homeschooling your children? What's most important to you at this time? And how do you make sure that your purpose and your actions are aligned to what you value most? As leaders, we cannot always feel we need to be the ones to provide inspiration. We need to make sure that we can get it ourselves and that we feel it ourselves first. The exercise is to absorb it, to feel it, so that you can extend it outward. Inspiration gives us energy. It makes us happy. I wanted to share with you, I don't know how many of you have watched, in the United States, have watched John Krasinski's Some Good News, SGN. John Krasinski is an American actor who starred in the American version of the Office sitcom. And from his home in Massachusetts, he started a virtual show called Some Good News, SGN. And all of the decorations, the backdrop were designed and painted and drawn out by his 2 young daughters. And in his home, he collects inspirational videos, he shares them, he invites celebrity guests on the show to talk to young people and share their own stories. And I've been tuning in regularly to his show, and it's been so simple and quite an emotional and inspirational thing for me to participate in. And not just because I'm a Bostonian myself, but because in the simplest of ways, he's humanized media, he's humanized celebrities, he's creating meaningful connections between people who may never have met before in our former normal. He had an episode where he was celebrating the graduating class of 2020, and he brought together 18-year-olds with Oprah Winfrey, Jon Stewart, and Malala, who herself is graduating this year. And I'm sharing this story with you because I found inspiration there in the smallest way. I was fortunate enough to be able to be in the comfort of my own home, safe and comfortable. There are many who work with us, for us, that are on the front lines and are inspiring us. In this moment, though, watching Oprah Winfrey and Malala interact with an 18-year-old from Missouri, it inspired me, and I was able to participate in that joy and in that wisdom. So to find that opportunity in this remote world that we're in, when we're inviting people into our homes in ways that we never have before, it refreshed me just enough to be able to go back to my tasks with a renewed energy and focus, to clean out my inbox, if that's what it was that I needed to do that next day. And I laugh at that, but it's true. It is about adjusting our expectations, our goals, and our priorities, in doing what makes sense for us right now, what feels real, finding inspiration in the real. So I want to pause for a moment and ask all of you to chat in the chat pod. Could you share with all of us some ways that you are finding inspiration these days? Where are you finding inspiration? And can you share with your colleagues from around the world who are in this call and on this webinar and with me, where are you finding it? How are you getting inspired? How are you getting energy out of meaning? Barb, if you could come off mute for a moment and let me know what we're seeing here in the chat pod, let's have a conversation about what people are sharing.
Hi, Elisa. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
We are seeing a lot of great chats. So I see taking more time in my garden, talking with my family, conversations with good friends, running my faith, taking online courses, helping others, nature. Lots of great chat.
That's wonderful. Everything from learning to gardening. I myself love to garden. It gives me a sense of things are still growing and thriving even when I'm not seeing that around me all the time. That's wonderful. And taking online courses, investing in yourself, connecting with family, taking those John Krasinski moments that I watch with my children and say, hey, I wasn't allowed this before. Now I can do this. What's the opportunity? How am I getting inspired? Anything else here? I saw someone chat here reading Brené Brown. You will love the fact that I'll be talking about Brené Brown tomorrow. There's a lot that we can take from Dare to Lead. So you taking this as an opportunity to inspire ourselves, to learn new things. This is making us stronger as leaders as we face the new normal. So many people are using this time to help make masks, do other things to help our frontline workers. For those of you that are frontline workers, my gratitude, our gratitude extends beyondward. And for people who are in the front lines, if there are any of you on the call, how are you strengthening? How are you keeping yourself resilient and healthy and well during this time? There's so much that we can learn. In times of crisis, we tend to focus in very deeply on what it is that we need to do. And we're not aware that still we're experiencing stress. Even if we have the momentum and we're still going at a pace that our bodies might not be used to. So finding that inspiration, dialing into your leadership purpose continues to be so important. Running, moving, walking our pets, whatever it is, we can't let that go. We're doing it now and we can't stop doing it in whatever the future holds. Thank you for sharing all of your stories with us. And for those of you, continue to look at the chat pod because you can see some great recommendations from your colleagues. Ultimately, it is your leadership purpose that will be an anchor for you, that rock in your moments of doubt and fear and exhaustion. It will help you and help your teams define their constants and establish structure and stability. And for those of you that mentioned your faith, when you have doubt, when you're so busy that you feel like you're losing sight of it, determine how you can get into a place of centeredness. I attended a women's leadership conference several years ago, and Elizabeth Gilbert, the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, said of leaders, the most powerful person in the room is the most relaxed person. The most powerful person in a room is the most relaxed, the most centered, and the most grounded. As soon as I heard her do that, I started calculating in my mind all of those times that I didn't feel centered and I didn't feel grounded, whether it was in a meeting or an interaction or a confrontation. And I thought to myself, if I want to come across as the most powerful person in the room, as the biggest influencer in the room, as someone who can have an impact and make a difference, how can I get to that place of centeredness and feel grounded when so much is going on around me? How do I go back to that? So how do we build our resilience and our leadership capacity? By envisioning our anchor. I think there are 4 things that we need to make sure that we do. The first, we already talked about, leverage our purpose first and foremost. Go back to it, refine it, make sure it rings true. Determine our spheres of influence and control, send centeredness signals to our body, and practice the release. A certain part of leadership is about control. Knowing when to set your anchor at the right time is a decision. It's a decision that, when well done, helps us regain control of a situation. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which you will have access to in the Percipio channel, Stephen Covey defines being proactive and centered as determining which of our concerns we have control over. I'm sure many of you on the call here know Covey. If you don't, he said that our behaviors are a function of our decisions, not our conditions. What a powerful statement for us to consider right now. Our behaviors are a function of our decisions, not our conditions. And making the right decision is determining what is within your sphere of influence and control, not your sphere of concern. When we live in times where there's a lot of unknown, we worry and we stress. This is a normal biological, physiological response that our bodies have. It's normal. We target our energy on those challenges that concern us, on those areas that worry us most. And then we feel unsuccessful and disappointed when we don't accomplish what we need to. Leadership in the new normal is going to require us to compartmentalize effectively, focusing our intellectual and emotional energy on the things that we value and prioritize. And the litmus test of our success is going to be whether we can control those things and influence those things. Surveying our environments and determining whether what we're focusing on is something we can actually influence or control or resolve is key to not only determining that we're using the right amount of energy, we're using the right amount of urgency, but also in conserving and preserving our engagement, our focus, and our drive. And when we can do that effectively, then it makes it easier for us to be able to lead others to do that effectively as well. I find myself asking this question of myself daily now. Is this within my sphere of concern, influence, or control? And I'll sometimes have to fact check myself with someone I trust. And then I determine, okay, what do I need to do about this from there? If this is something that I'm concerned about, but I have no influence or control over it, I have to figure out how to let it go. And if I can't, of good mind and good body, let it go, then I have to figure out how to allow myself a limited amount of time during the day to focus on it, stress on it, do whatever I need to do, but then push it aside for the rest of the day. If this is something that I can influence the results of, then I have to figure out how I can influence it. And if this is something that I can control, then I have to figure out how I need to move, what decisions I need to make, and how I can prioritize this and use the right amount of urgency. So to do this effectively, when there's a lot that feels like it's out of our control, is the challenge. One of the things that I've heard leaders, or I've coached leaders, or people have shared with me, is that there are ways to send signals to our brains and our bodies when we need to get centered. We all have those negative triggers that create emotional responses. Well, what about having and making sure that we have positive triggers that create positive emotional responses for us. Either positive imagery, mental imagery, something that helps you think positively and brings you back to focus. Is there an image of a person, a place, a thing that whenever you think of it, makes you pause? Imagery, touch, breathing, all provide stimuli to our bodies, reminding us to pause. I used to work for an executive who said that every time she would feel herself getting stressed in a meeting, she would unfold her hands and leave them open on top of her lap, just like this, palms up. And it signaled to her body and to her brain that she wanted to feel relaxed and portray a sense of openness and inclusivity. And she said, when I did that, it helped ground me. It helped give me focus on how I want to show up so that I actually show up that way. Think for a moment if you have a signal. Do you have an image? Do you have a behavior that brings you back and helps you feel fully present and engaged? Is there a word that you can say to yourself? Maybe it's related to your purpose. Whatever it is, recalling it when you're unclear, when you're under pressure or distracted, helps you get back and get focused. And lastly, when we talk about that anchor and really envisioning it as leaders and going back to what is most important, it helps us prioritize. It helps us get focused on what's important. But we have to be really careful that these anchors don't get us stuck, don't get stuck, and that we don't get stuck with them. Staying anchored and centered and grounded is a good way to hone into your values and priorities. And as we will discuss tomorrow, it will assist you in focusing on the right work with the right people around you. But when overused, it can prevent us from maintaining momentum. Remember, leadership in the new normal is at equal parts centeredness and equal parts movement. So in order to make sure that your anchor does not become an additional burden to you or prevent you and your teams from building agility, you need to practice your release mechanisms often. As humans, we can adapt pretty quickly. For example, 4 months ago, the thought of quarantine with life stuck at home was unimaginable to many of us. Then as the months passed, we adapted. And now, as I'm talking to friends, family, and colleagues from around the world, we've adapted so much that for some of us, we're experiencing anxiety about going back out, going back into our workplaces. Our release mechanisms could be anything from calling a friend or a mentor, running ideas by someone else, getting new data or perspectives from someone else, from somewhere else, getting up and moving, as many of you said. Now, in the case of leadership, this doesn't mean that you can just let go and walk away. Your release needs to be part gut and intuition and part strategy. And in those moments when someone else or something else is forcing you to pull up anchor and you don't feel great about it, remember that we build our resilience when we build our bounce. And by focusing on those areas that we influence and that we can control, and we try to let the rest go as much as possible. So let's pause here for a moment and reflect on how we can envision our anchor effectively as leaders in a new normal. So Shannon, if you could bring up poll number 2 for us. Right now, in response to this global pandemic, and as you look beyond it, which one of these anchor points is most challenging for you? And remember, this is an anonymous poll. Is it leveraging your purpose first and foremost? Is it determining your spheres of influence and control? Is it sending centeredness signals to your body? Is it practicing the release? Is it all of them? Is it none of them? I'll give you just a few moments to answer the poll here, and then Shannon will show us the results. Excellent. Shannon, could you show us the results? Determining your sphere of influence and control is the winner. But again, there are no losers in this race. Look at all of them, right? We all have challenges in these areas. In determining your sphere of influence and control, sometimes requires that you ask the question out loud to those that are leading you, to others that are around you, to say, can I influence this? Is this something that I can control? Or do I have to let this go? Do I need to hang my hat on this right now? Or do I need to be focusing elsewhere? This is a great challenge for leaders, regardless of what times we're operating in, whether it's before this global crisis, currently, afterwards. It will continue to be a challenge, but we need to make sure that we're asking ourselves that question over and over again. Now, let's shift our own mindsets for just a moment. And Shannon, if you could bring up poll number 3, same question, different focus. Now we're focusing on our strengths, what we're doing well. Right now, in response to this global pandemic, which one of these anchor points has been easiest for you? Is it the flip? I'll leave you a few minutes to answer that. It looks like there's a clear winner here, which is interesting. Shannon, if you could share the results with everyone, let's talk about this. So what's easiest for most of us is leveraging our purpose first and foremost. Chat in the chat pod, why do you think that is? Why do you think that that's easiest for us at this time? And could it be because we see around us so much inspiration? We are connecting with people in new ways like we've never connected before. Why right now is finding our leadership purpose an area where we're stronger? And if this isn't your area, this hasn't been easiest for you, there's so much to learn, right, from those of us that have found that to be so. But also there's so much that we can learn from you around, for those of you that said that determining your sphere of influence and control is easier. Why is that? What is it that you do that helps make it easier for you? So chat in the chat pod for a moment. And Barb, if you could come off mute and share with us what people are chatting and some general trends, what are you doing that is making these things easier for you?
All right. It looks like inner control and strength. And wow, you've got a lot of great chat going on. I have specific goals that guide me. And so one person has said, the chaos and change has required me to be more intentional about my why, so I can prioritize.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here. It's being intentional and empowering yourself and not making excuses and not asking for forgiveness. That is leadership. In the new normal, it's going to be about your intentionality. That's wonderful. Someone here I see said, mastering the law of intention. That's exactly it. And I don't know that there's one particular formula or one particular law, but that is it. It is mastering that. How can I be most intentional and most focused? And when we are, it really helps us reduce stress. So thank you so much for sharing those anchor points. There's so much more that we can learn from each other. So please continue chatting and in the chat pod. I see a lot of people here talking about removing negative chatter from their lives, from making sure that they're focusing on what's most important. Thank you for sharing that. When we feel like perhaps we're getting too grounded and too stuck, again, it becomes that balance between that centeredness and that momentum. And the imagery that I'm using here of the compass is when we need to really rely on the tools that we need to use to attain and achieve our visions. So arguably, it is difficult to have a vision for the future when we're operating with so much unknown. And for many of us, focusing on tactical execution from one day to the next, as opposed to bold and big and innovative strategic leadership moves. 6 months ago, if you asked me what visionary leadership was, I would say that it was a leader's capacity to set an end goal, to foresee an end state that is good and true, and to inspire, influence, and manage the people, processes, and systems around them to achieve that goal. We have an Aspire journey in Percipio on visionary leadership. And in the journey, we describe a visionary leader as follows. Someone who has sound understanding on where the organization is going. Someone who gets results through strategies and goals that have purpose and direction. Someone who considers the most effective way to realize goals. Someone who stays focused when adapting to change. Someone who builds a culture of execution where goals are clearly linked to the big picture. All of these things are true. And in the new normal, it's even simpler. Using your compass in the new normal in the months and the years to come requires you to set a realistic destination so that you feel like you've accomplished something when you reach it. Be agile in your direction so that you will have to, when you have to pivot, which you will, you know how and you feel comfortable with it. Check in with yourself often. Give yourself a pulse check regularly and rebrand disruption as positive. And we'll talk about what that means. In his book, True North, which we also have in the Leading in the New Normal Percipio channel, Bill George says that leadership is a journey, not a destination. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a process, not an outcome. Your true north, your compass, sets that direction for you and keeps you focused. What I like about this quote is that it gives me an image of endurance and process, which both I can influence and I can design and I can control. I can control where I set my true north most of the time. I can control what those goals are in my mind. What happens when my organization, the people, my peers, the people I'm working for, have different true norths than me? Well, what's my compass? And how do I make sure I dial into that and I talk about it and I say it out loud when I need to? If I get in the mindset of planning for a marathon, now's the time for me to carb up, for me to build my endurance for what's to come. Building our resilience for what lies ahead. We need to have a clear sense, though, of what we're working for and what we're looking to accomplish. And we need to acknowledge that we cannot run marathons in long distances in a continuous loop. We are simply not built for that. So leaders, step number one for using your compass in the new normal is to select and set a realistic destination and make them shorter. There is a new normal coming, but we can't think of it in the way that we've done things before. In fact, let's just stop categorizing things as normal altogether. Our barometer for what success is going to look like should not be that we're going back to how things were, but rather how we can come through this transformed. We can come through this with more focus, clarity on what's important and what we need to accomplish. We got through the first few phases of this by establishing new ways of connecting, of sharing, of leading, and we're never going to be in a place where we can revert back. So ask yourself, if there's no normal in the new normal, what is it realistic for you to accomplish? What can you realistically want or expect your teams to accomplish? Shorten the distance between your marathons so that they're realistic, and attainable, and where your success is measurable. It's detrimental for our leadership, for our well-being, for our resilience to constantly feel defeated and depleted. This means setting writing down, and constantly refining your mini goals. Yes, you need to have a long-term view, but releasing your anchor and setting sail effectively and in a way that feels healthy for you is going to require that you're realistic about the tools and resources that you have on board to get you there, and that you're setting a destination that makes sense given the current environment. And the reason why it's so important to be realistic with our goals and to have these mini short-term goals that chart our vision is because inevitably, in the unknown, we may have to change course. We can't control the winds, we can't control the waves, but we can control our responsiveness to them. And leading in the new normal means that we're comfortable with pivoting. I've often trained and coached leaders in all parts of their career journey. And I've said that one of the greatest strengths and abilities for a leader to have is the knowledge that in any particular moment, you might either need to pivot or persevere. At this moment in time, while managing this organizational change, while implementing this new process, whatever it may be, I need to stay on course. Or I may need to adjust and realign. So leaders being able to ask themselves the question and act accordingly and bring others along with them. Do I need to stay my course, or do I need to pivot my approach completely? The problem in the past is that we were using the word or. We've looked at these two P's, pivoting and persevering, as either we can do one or the other. But in the new normal, we have to look at them as siblings. Sometimes they fight with each other. Sometimes they support each other. They build off of each other. As leaders in the new normal, we need to be able to do both. Set realistic goals, but be agile in how we get there, responding to the obstacles we have in our way, and sometimes persevering through them. So this is a mindset shift for us. It's not, do I pivot or persevere? Do I need to pivot and persevere? How do I make that decision? And how do I make sure that I'm making the right decision? Am I doing a pulse check with myself? Am I asking others? How am I involving others as part of that conversation? So let's pause for a moment and reflect what we've been saying here. This is a lot of work. And you don't want to bounce around too much, right? When we say build your bounce, have grit and have resilience, you want to make sure that you're feeling like you're making progress, that your teams feel like they're making meaningful progress if they can, that they have meaning. Your compass helps you set your direction, chart your purpose, and keeps you on your path when you do have to pivot. But with all of the twists and turns and movement that we're all experiencing right now, it's important that we pause and check our own pulses on a regular basis. Check in with yourself. Take time when you can, regroup. It might feel right now like this activity is not realistic. It sounds from what we're seeing in the chat pod that many of us are making sure that we do that, which is wonderful. It's healthy. It's the right thing to do. We can't afford not to. This is what it means to put our own oxygen masks on first. So Barb, to take my own advice here, I want to pause for just a moment and check in on the chat pod. What are you seeing? What are we talking about? What are people sharing?
A few people, Elisa, have shared their struggles with, for instance, here is one. I envision myself in the eye of a hurricane. I can't control the chaos, but how can I center myself in the midst of it and not get pulled in?
That's a wonderful question. That is such a powerful statement. I'm in the eye of a hurricane. And even if I see just a glimpse of light, I'm afraid to feel too much hope because I know that the winds and the storm is still coming. And how do I make sure that I stay centered, that I check in daily, that I surround myself with people that I can trust that can help me stay centered? Waiting it out, but making sure that we're really strategic about this is what's important. This is where I need to prioritize my time and energy. And I just need to sit here, and when I can, when the winds are done twirling around me and I can see that clarity, how can I get that path forward? How can I move forward? Do I write it down? Do I talk through with my leader, with someone else? How can I realistically do that? What a powerful statement and a powerful analogy. Thank you so much for sharing that. Any other comments, Barb?
There was another. This one indicated that, let's see, when facing ambiguity, it seems that we fill the white spaces with more negative thought. Do you have a suggestion for how to focus on opportunities and keep thinking forward?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. So as I had said earlier on here, we collect so much noise that gives us negativity. But our capacity to have an image, to have a friend network, to have a lifeline, to surround ourselves with stories that inspire are so important. I'll share with you something that we've done at Skillsoft, which has really helped me be crystal clear about the people that I'm working with, the organization I'm working for, and has inspired me to deal with that ambiguity, that uncertainty with focus. We created a shared site where we share inspirational stories with each other. Inspirational stories that we're seeing in our client organizations, that we're seeing in our families, from our friends. And we go there and we're just sharing moments of presence where we are doing great things, we see others doing great things, and it gives us an opportunity not only to acknowledge and connect and get to know each other more, but it really crystallizes, for me at least, and I know for many of my colleagues, what's most important. So that as we chart our way forward, and again, we might not be able to forecast right now, but what we are able to do is scenario plan, a bunch of different scenarios and say, if this happens, this is how we respond. Being able to read other people's inspirational stories and connect that way gives me a sense of, we're in this together. There's strength in this organization, and I'm proud of that. And it helps me manage the Vuca and me focus on what's most important and me extend a hand and others extend a hand, and it creates this community. So in your workplaces, creating these moments that matter, these spaces that matter, continues to be so important for us. And we can't let that go once, as different states, as different countries, as different regions around the world, we start to open our doors. We can't let that hyper connection that we have now go, because it's going to help us continue to unchart and navigate in these waters. Thank you. That was a wonderful question. Because sometimes to that point, to that question, to the eye in the storm comment, we feel like we're in a constant state of disruption. And that doesn't feel good right now, right? It doesn't feel good to feel like you're in the eye of a storm. It's extremely destabilizing. For several years now, we've been labeling certain types of leaders who are risk takers, change agents, transformational leaders as disruptors. Maybe some of us on the call identify as a disruptor, right? I was a disruptor in my organization. I was someone who came in and transformed something that was low efficiency, low energy, slow moving, and I turned it into something new and innovative and agile. Now, however, that we've gone through so much disruption without any of us welcoming it, we need to have a different perception of change. Disruption needs a bit of a rebrand. Leadership in the new normal is not disruptive in the negative. It needs to be transformational. It needs to be evolutionary. It needs to be compassionate. We can't break things down for the sake of breaking them down without thinking about, how can I rebuild immediately and quickly? My current leader always reminds us, do not solve problems by creating more problems. And what he means by that is, be conscious of unintended consequences. Speed for the sake of speed right now is dangerous. The people that we're leading ourselves, don't need disruptive leaders now. They need strategic builders. They need empathetic problem solvers. They need compassionate coaches. the same stuff is there, but calling it something different keeps us focused on what the needs are now and helps us to embody those characteristics more effectively. So I want to pause for a moment again. And Shannon, if you could pull up the poll for number 4. Again, just do your quick pulse check. Right now, which one of these compass points that we talked about is most challenging? Is it selecting a realistic destination, keeping the journey agile, checking in with yourself often, or rebranding disruption as positive? All of them, none of them. I'll leave you a moment to answer those. And then here's a preview. I'm also going to ask you again, what's been easiest for you? So what's been most challenging? Thank you for submitting your answers. Wait a little longer as more people are answering. There's one clear winner, which I'd love for us to talk about. So the clear winner, I'll let you keep answering, and then Shannon, in a minute or so, if you could show the results to everybody. But the clear winner here is rebranding disruption as positive. And I think part of that really is, Shannon, if you could show everybody the results now. Thank you so much. The reality is that we need to stop using the word for now. It's that simple, right? We're not looking for disruption. We're looking to build. We're looking to transform. We're looking to learn from this experience and have it fundamentally change the way we behave, interact with each other, the way we speak to both the head and the heart of the people that we lead. And so I agree with you. This has been the most challenging. And it's not that disruption is always negative, because again, we can come through it uncovering new things about what makes us stronger. But it's the word that we use and the feeling that it gives. Tomorrow, when we talk about leadership and leading others, we're going to talk a lot about leading, right? What does it mean to lead someone? Well, leadership is a feeling. It's a feeling that you have, and it's a feeling that you extend out to others. So the word disruption creates so much negative feeling for us right now. So Shannon, if you could bring up poll number 5, let's switch our mindsets for just a moment on the positive. Which one of these compass points has been easiest for you? And when you're done with your poll, chat in the chat pod why. Why has this been easiest for you? What have you been doing that works? It's making it stick. I see some people are talking about setting boundaries. Fantastic. We all need to make sure that we set boundaries, and that we're also realistic about the boundaries that those that work with us and for us also need to set. We role model that. That's excellent. Thank you. Shannon, if you could show the results of the poll. Keep the journey agile. It's that pivot, persevere, those opposing forces that I'm telling you need to be more like siblings. Absolutely, right? In this particular moment, do I pivot and refocus, or do I just go through? So for those of you that have said this is easiest for you, keeping the journey agile, knowing when to pivot, knowing when to persevere, having a support network that helps you make that decision, what are you doing? For those of you that said that checking in with yourself often, or setting a realistic destination, or rebranding disruption as positive, since rebranding disruption as positive was a big challenge for so many people, what are you doing? Why is it easier for you? And some of it may be your organization, your circumstances, where you are in life. Barb, if you could come off mute and let us know, share with us what people are chatting and what some of the trends are. What are people doing that that's making this easy for them?
Sure.
And easy, I just want to make this really clear. Easy doesn't mean that it just comes to you easily. It's an intentionality. And I want to recognize that for people. Thank you, Barb.
Sure. One of the things is the agile approach looks to be popular, and I'm blocking accomplishments on a daily basis rather than long term.
Absolutely. Making it a daily exercise. Yes.
Yeah. And it looks like viewing disruptions in a more positive way. And so working from home, of course, has its own unique set of disruptions, but viewing them, reframing that. Um, Making sure that you show up for yourself and that your values are constant no matter what's happening externally. Yeah.
That's great. There was a word in there, Barb, that I really want to pull out that you said, someone said here, reframing. This is all about reframing. This is one big exercise in reframing our values, our priorities, reframing disruption, thinking about how we look at this, the challenges that we have, and reframe them into opportunities that can inspire us and fuel us. Such a powerful comment. Thank you for sharing that. For me, this last part of the leadership journey is the most challenging, and it's that of managing the storm. I might have a strong anchor. I might be building a strong sense of direction with my compass. I might be able to think about how I can have these mini marathons along the way. But managing the storm around me, and I'm just going to go back to that comment about being in the eye of the storm, feels difficult. And balancing my responsiveness as a leader with what so many of you are talking about, with the boundaries needed for this awkward work-life dance that we're all doing, has been challenging. So I'm using the terminology work-life dance intentionally. I think we need to stop thinking about it as balance. We need to stop thinking about it as integration. We need to stop thinking about it in any way that has one particular formula or way of doing it. It's a dance. And every day when you get up, that dance needs to look a little different. And we can have fun with it, but at times it will be awkward, right? Our work and our lives are integrated in ways that they've never been integrated before. We're in our homes, we're working with children downstairs, we're connecting on our screens more than ever. But this is all good and it is needed and it ensures continuity on our teams. We can't stop doing it all together, but it's exhausting. And the question of how can I be responsive? How can I manage the storm? And at the same time, respect my and my teammates' boundaries. These are 4 simple ways that have helped me do it. And I say simple in the sense that the sentences are short. But it takes a lot of intentionality and hard work, right? Manage the noise, have your support network ready, prioritize frequently and check in, and embrace the notion that practice makes permanent, not perfect. So at our Perspectives event, for those of you that participated, for those of you that didn't, Sean Anker shared another interesting tidbit. He said that our brains are unable to process information effectively with good reason and critical thinking in the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes of our day. Now, I know this, but this knowledge has not stopped me from getting up every morning, grabbing my phone while I'm still in bed, and reading the Washington Post. There are 2 types of noise that we face today. The noise that we need to absorb because we need to consume it in order to be informed and healthy and educated. And the noise that we can manage by either eliminating it or consuming it in limited chunks at a time of day when we can absorb it. And we can absorb it with limited worry, and we're more capable of determining concern, influence, or control. Choosing not to self-induce noise is one of the smartest things that leaders can do today. And so many of you have been chatting about that in the chat pod. Regardless of where you are in your career, managing the noise helps provide a sense of calm and allows time for mindfulness. So instead of reading the Washington Post, I could take deep breaths. I could get up and stretch. I could eat breakfast with my family. We need to be more intentional and deliberative, because moving forward, the noise is not going to will not go away. We will not be able to eliminate it. So how can we manage it intentionally? Now, this quarantine has, for many of us, allowed us to be more present and observe and see things that we've never seen before. So the other day I was on my patio and I saw something happen that I have to tell you, I may not have ever had the attention span to notice before, but I saw a hawk flying above, back and forth over my house. And then at a distance, I saw several chickadees starting to fly around the hawk, and then several crows came and joined the chickadees, and they were chirping and swooping at the hawk. Then several more joined in the effort, and more small birds. It was both this beautiful dance and very interesting to watch. Eventually the hawk just left. If the hawk wanted to, it could have taken those birds in its talons and destroyed them all. So why did it just leave? So of course I Googled it and started reading all about mobbing. So mobbing, not the best word choice, but mobbing is a phenomena that happens among birds when a bird of prey is too close to the nests of other birds. The collective come together to defend. Now, scientists are not sure whether the bird of prey gets disoriented and leaves, or if it does a strategic calculation and quickly determines that the food is not worth the energy and the effort. Either way, it was a powerful demonstration which made me think about who's in my support network? Who's going to come out with me? How do they support me? Who is in your support network in those moments when you need to dial into the collective? As I mentioned before in response to that question, feeling like you can just wait out, be in the eye of the storm, and manage your way through it, a lot of it is about who's in your village. How can they support you best? Leadership can feel lonely. It can feel like no one understands the pressures that you have. Make a list of who you dial into on a regular basis and make a plan on how to keep in touch with those people. Leverage your personal and your professional network with intention and purpose. Extending a hand and asking for help is not a sign of weakness. In fact, as leaders leading in the new normal, the people that work with us and for us want to see that we have that vulnerability. We've tricked ourselves into thinking that as leaders, we need to have all of the answers. False. The most effective leaders can achieve balance between asking for help and driving for results. Leading in the new normal is going to mean building and using your support network in your village in smart ways. And another part of managing the storm is to prioritize frequently and check in, as we've discussed before. How many of you have seen Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants of productivity? In the 7 habits of highly effective people, he says that effective leaders can organize their times and priorities by determining the appropriate level of urgency. It's an oldie but a goodie. What happens though during those times of extended crisis, when we feel like we have time for nothing else except for everything that's urgent and important? In times of crisis, does this mean that we just have to eliminate everything else and not even live in the other 4 quadrants? Not necessarily, because some of those activities that we might do in quadrant 4 might give us inspiration and might inspire us. It's being really strategic and thoughtful about how you can take all of those quadrant 1, those urgent, those important tasks that you feel are burning on your desks every day, and redistributing them across the 4 quadrants, and doing a reality check. Fact check. Are these important and urgent? If they are, how do I react in the moment? If they're not, how do I react later when I have more energy, time, attention, and focus? And making sure that you're using technology to do that. I don't need to share with all of you that there are a number of digital planners that allow us to do this exercise of prioritization. It can help us regain a sense of control and focus in our planning. And if it feels like I just don't have time to plan anymore, I'm here to tell you that we can't afford not to. Without this, we don't know if we're working towards the right goals or solving the right problems. And through it all, like I tell my son when he gets frustrated while practicing the piano, embrace the notion that practice makes permanent, not perfect. As we all manage these storms, there's no one right way to do this, no perfect solution or formula. Practice, fail, learn, regroup, pivot, persevere. We're practicing. And this practice is going to help us come out the other side with competencies and skills that will make us stronger leaders with more informed and effective behaviors. So this notion of practice makes permanent is one of giving yourself permission and empowering yourself to say, I might not feel like I have it right, but these behaviors that I'm learning now, I need to make sure that I give them a sense of permanence in my life moving forward and that I don't lose them. So Shannon, if you could bring up our second to last poll and ask all of you now for one last time, right now, what piece of managing the storm has been most challenging? Is it managing the noise? Is it having your support network ready? Is it prioritizing frequently? Or is it embracing the notion that practice makes permanent? Is it all of them? Is it none of them? There's a clear winner here, and I think this speaks so much to the state of our world right now. I'll let you keep answering. And if you want to chat in the chat pod about what has made your most challenging piece the most challenging, we'll flip in a moment and talk about what's been easiest for us all. So thank you so much, Shannon, for sharing. Yes, managing the noise. I was speaking to a leader the other day who said to me, I'm reading news and I have to pause after the first paragraph in an article and say, does this have an immediate impact on what I need to accomplish today? If this information has an immediate impact on what I need to accomplish today, I will continue to read it. If not, I will put it aside. And I thought to myself, that's a really important and powerful statement to make. Does this have an immediate impact? Do I need this information right now for what I need to accomplish today? And helping those people that work for us and with us to ask those same questions, to eliminate the noise. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about effective change leadership and how we can help eliminate noise for the people that work for us by communicating and providing transparency and some best practices there. But I agree with you, it is increasingly difficult to eliminate noise these days. So Shannon, if you could pull up our last poll, which is the flip of that, which is right now, which pieces of managing the storm have been easiest for you in the sense that you've been able to apply the most intentionality to them? And when you're done answering the poll, if you could chat in the chat pod, what has made this easy for you? What have you been doing? And share that with all of us. That would be great. So Shannon, if you could share the results in just a minute or two. So as you can see here, having your support network ready and prioritizing frequently and checking in are easiest for people. And in large part, I think that's because we've been connecting with each other in ways that we've never connected before. And that this global pandemic that we're experiencing has brought us together with a shared sense of purpose and commonality and focus. And that is where the opportunity lies. It's in harnessing that energy. It's in harnessing that feeling and continuing to allow it to live in our work environments. So Barb, if you could come off mute for a moment, what are people chatting about? What are we saying? What are some best practices for helping manage the storm? What are people doing?
I see recognizing, forming a core group and
Oh,
maintaining the
wonderful.
support network. hmm Yep. Allowing myself to be vulnerable. There
What
was
does
a,
that mean? Go ahead, Barb.
I think it came through as showing empathy, being authentic.
Yes, yes, I like that. So authenticity and vulnerability, saying out loud what's happening in my life, saying out loud how I'm managing the storm has such an impact. We hear ourselves say it and we process it differently, and then we also role model it for others.
Yeah, and Elisa, there was one more thing, and it was a flurry of agreement about managing the way you approach news.
Yes. And what are people saying? Does the Sean Aker quote resonate with everybody,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Not 30 minutes in the morning. Don't do what Elisa does. Don't read 30 minutes in the morning or 30 minutes before bed at night. Yeah. What else are people saying about that?
Monitoring the amount, just
Mm,
the fact that we are all very close to the TV doesn't mean that it has to be on all the time. That's what I'm seeing.
that's
Uh,
wonderful.
yeah.
That's
Uh,
good. That is a good tip, right? Just because we can connect with each other and see each other and be on our devices all the time doesn't mean that we need to. And that's quite intentional as well. I often think about in the new normal, I think about our eye health, right? We're in front of screens, we're constantly interacting with each other this way. How do we make sure that we are thinking about all the parts of our anatomy, all of our senses, and how we're taking care of them? And just because it's here doesn't mean that we have to use it all the time. And that goes back to the comment earlier about boundaries, right? Boundaries for myself and boundaries for those that work for me. The other day, I had a colleague, we had an appointment to meet face to face virtually. And the colleague said to me, "Do you mind if we just do a good old fashioned call and I can go for a walk?" Absolutely. What a refreshing idea. We're still connecting. I know what she looks like. We've been connecting virtually, but we got up and we moved, and our conversation was so much richer. So that's excellent advice. Thank you all for mentioning that. So, friends, along the way on this journey, we will fall and we will have to pick ourselves back up again. Make sure to celebrate the small victories as well as the big ones for yourself, for your families, for your teams. I've been observing lately in just my circle of leaders, in my circle of friends and colleagues, stories about executive leaders who are walking shop floors, connecting with people, being fully present and fully human, like they've never been before, like they've never had time to do before. Well, they are now. I've heard stories of colleagues who are taking in the children of other colleagues from overseas because they were stuck here at college and couldn't get home at the onset of the pandemic. I'm hearing stories of organizations that have to make difficult decisions but are working hard to do well by their people and safeguard their future in any way that they can. For every failure, there's a victory somewhere. Celebrating your victories out loud for yourself and for the people that you lead in ways that are appropriate for you now and have meaning now, even if they're small, even if it's wearing your favorite band t-shirt to a virtual meeting. For me, it might be eating a bowl of ice cream after I tackle something that was difficult for me to tackle for work. Whatever it is, make sure that you're celebrating victories and that you're not doing it alone, but you're doing it with others as well. So leadership in the new normal, as we start to wrap up for today, is everything that we've been discussing here, everything that you've been sharing with each other here. It's deliberative. We know this. It's a matter of acting on it. Leadership in the new normal is not selfish, but nor is it selfless. And it starts with you. Where and when you can, please take moments to pause, remember your purpose, find your inspiration, Have a long-term view where you can, but keep the journey short so that you feel like you can be successful, right? If I had a project that I was working on that was big and was going to take a year to implement, and all of a sudden the funding was cut and I can't do that anymore, how can you shelf that, but take the energy that you had for that and focus on something that needs to happen and that can happen tomorrow, where you can be successful at the end of the week? Break it down into small chunks to help you be able to have a vision for success in the future. Practice self-compassion and expect some bumps in the road, but redefine those as learning. So as we wrap up each session, I'm going to do this again tomorrow and again on Thursday. I'm going to ask you one question, and I'm going to ask that you write down your answer right now before you get distracted, before any other additional noise enters your space. Right now, think to yourself and write it down. What is one thing I will either start, stop, or continue doing as a result of what I learned here today? One thing, just one thing, keep it small, that I will start, stop, or continue doing as a result of what I reviewed here today and what we talked about today and what I learned from others, right? And write it down and go back to it and remind yourself, I promise to stop consuming the news the first 30 minutes that I wake up. I promise to start celebrating our small successes and small victories. I'm here, I'm present. I had to take time. I had to barricade my door from little ones walking in. Tonight, I have to go and visit my elderly parent or grandparent through a window in a home. Celebrate the fact that you could be fully present with me, with all of us here today. That's a victory, and that's you investing in yourself. Now, tomorrow, the focus will be on extending everything that we have learned here today about building our resilience and our agility with those who we lead. Engaging our team members, inspiring our team members, providing them with clarity and focus. And then on day 3, we're going to talk about how we can build organizational continuity, resilience, and infrastructure in times of Vuca. So it was a delight to spend time with you today. Thank you for your participation, for your active engagement. Thank you for what you have taught me. We have included a survey link in the chat pod. We would love to hear your thoughts on how the session went today. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening, depending on where you're calling in from. And I look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow as we continue this journey together. So please click on the survey link and let us know if you have any questions. Take care, everyone. Thank you.